speakers. So we'll start with Henry McGhie's talk, in which he will share his insights on how multilateral environmental agreements can serve as practical tools for collections-based organizations and workers to align their actions with global sustainability goals and contribute meaningfully to environmental and social challenges. So let's watch Henry's presentation.
Hello, my name is Henry McGhie and I run a consultancy for museums and other cultural institutions called Curating Tomorrow. And I'm going to talk briefly about how we can use the multilateral agreements as practical tools to support environmental action with collections. So what are these environmental agreements? We can think of some of them as including the Rio Declaration, the Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the Convention on Biological Diversity, and they all come from 1992 from the Rio Earth Summit. And of course, we have the Paris Agreement, which supports the Framework Convention, and it's from slightly later, 2015, but still 10 years ago. So let's look firstly at climate action. So if we think about the Paris Agreement, it has the goals of reducing emissions, adapting to climate change, supporting funding for climate action, and promoting climate justice around the world. And we can use the agreement in a very practical way to think about how we adopt its goals as our goals, how we structure our action around its contents, and then how we use it to report our actions. So we can really use it as a template for ambitious, effective climate action that already applies around the world. And so within the Paris Agreement, there is part of it is called Action for Climate Empowerment, is Article 12 of the Paris Agreement. And it has these 6 aspects to it around education, training, public awareness, public access to information, public participation, and international cooperation on climate change matters. And so when I look at this list, to me, it speaks very much of the work of museums, libraries, and other collection-based institutions. And recognizing that just a list of 6 actions is not enough, what else do we need? So we have a shorter term work programme for this called the Glasgow Work Programme. It runs till 2031. And it says in order to embed these 6 activities, education, training, and so on, there are 4 additional things that we need. We need policy coherence for climate action, meaning that different sectors need to make sure that their policies are really supporting climate action. We need to coordinate our action so that we act together and not alone. We support our staff and society with capacity building through tools and training. And we need more effective monitoring, evaluation, and reporting of our actions to help to scale up climate action. And we can use this framework to support the work of museums, libraries, and other collections-based institutions, but we can also use it as a framework, across society is really good. If we turn now to biodiversity, biological diversity, the main agreement is called the Convention on Biological Diversity from 1992, with these 3 goals about promoting conservation and restoration of biodiversity, promoting its sustainable use, including traditional use, and sharing the benefits of use more fairly. It also emphasizes the importance of science and knowledge resources such as collections. And like the Paris Agreement, it also includes an aspect on communication, education, and public awareness. There is a lot else in the convention around research and so on. And it has, again, a shorter term action plan called the Global Biodiversity Framework, which runs until 2030. And although I've put an image here of a natural history museum, because climate action and biodiversity conservation touch on many aspects of our lives, many kinds of museum, many libraries, many kinds of collection-based institution can connect with climate action and biodiversity conservation and use. And so we can say in a brief way that collections are multifunctional resources that help to educate and inform people about environmental change, environmental challenges, opportunities, and actions that they can take. They're a vital research tool to understand how we can manage environmental challenges as best we can. Collections are four-dimensional. They cover time as well as space. We can go back in time to study questions that we can't even imagine, that couldn't have been imagined when these collections were put together. But in order to be effective, collections need to be developed in order to study environmental change. And we also need to mobilize the huge amounts of information that remains locked away on specimen labels in museums into aggregators such as GBIF for biodiversity information. So this would be my closing remark, really, is to use international environmental agreements to inform the goals, our definitions, and to structure our actions for environmental action. We can use their shorter term action plans as an even more focused way to do things. We can use these conventions and their action plans to communicate our actions. We can use them to help develop cross-sector partnerships that unlock the potential of collections. And to say working with the high-level agreements is really a very good, very practical way to contribute in direct and concrete ways to high ambition environmental action. And we can say that this is good for people, it's good for nature, and it's good for the institutions too. So I'd say thank you for listening. I'd leave my contact details here, and some of the guides that I've talked about in this presentation are available free, open access on my website, and the address is at the bottom there. So thank you.
Thanks to Harry, and we'll look forward to continue the conversation with him in the Q&A session. So in the next presentation, Mitzi Jonelle challenges us to reimagine museums, libraries, and archives as active agents of climate justice, amplifying marginalized voices, confronting colonial legacies, and inspiring a regenerative future. So let's watch Mitzi's presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm Mitzi Jonelle and I'm a climate justice activist from the Philippines, where the climate crisis isn't a future threat, it's a daily reality. Floods, typhoons, and disappearing biodiversity are not just statistics for us, they are lived experiences. And I want to start with this. Museums, libraries, and archives are not neutral. They never have been. They're powerful institutions that tell stories about who we are, where we come from, and what futures are possible. And in a time of climate crisis, biodiversity collapse, and mass displacement, these stories matter more than ever. I am part of the advisory board for the Natural History Museum of London's Generation Hope program, which brings together young people, scientists, and frontline communities to confront the interconnected crises that we face and build pathways toward justice. And I bring this program into my conversation with you all today because I think it's such a concrete example of how museums can uplift and engage youth activists and really shape the climate movement in a way. What makes Generation Hope different is that it doesn't just communicate the science of the climate emergency, it centers people, especially youth from the Global South. It creates a space where science meets activism and where lived experience is treated as knowledge. And it's not just a temporary initiative, it's also becoming part of the museum's DNA. Now, within the Natural History Museum of London, there's a permanent exhibit called the Fixing Our Broken Planet exhibit, where the problem, climate change, biodiversity loss, is laid out clearly through science and research and through their collection. But right next to the collections is a space where activist voices, including mine, share stories of what can be done, of what's already being done. And we are there to show that we are not just passive victims of this crisis, we are active agents of change. And seeing the young people going around the exhibit and really seeing the collection and seeing other young people already taking change, I really see that spark that happens within them where they're like, there's something that we can already do. And here are some examples, and that means there must be so many more different examples also. And you awaken this curiosity in them and this thirst to want to know more because they know that there's something that they can do. Because while science helps us understand the what and the how, it's people, especially youth, indigenous peoples, and communities on the front lines who carry the why. And together, we hold the solutions. And now more than ever, museums, libraries, and archives need to become spaces of mobilization and repair, which means confronting colonial histories, not hiding them. That means divesting from fossil fuels and polluting industries, and that means working with communities, not just displaying them. It means transforming your collections into tools for solidarity, not just preservation. So here's what I'm asking of you. 1, be brave enough to tell the whole story, even the uncomfortable parts. I had the opportunity to collaborate with the Natural History Museum of London to create a panel that was all about reckoning with the colonial roots of natural history and imagining what it could look like to decolonize the stories we tell about nature and people. We co-curated this panel on climate justice, bringing in youth voices from the Global South, experts from different fields, and scientists and curators from the museum. And what struck me most was the willingness of some within the museum to be uncomfortable, to confront the legacy of extraction and empire that many collections are built on, and how engaged the audience was. Not just being a passive audience, but asking their own questions, asking how they can collaborate, asking how they can ensure that this keeps going and how they can keep doing things with the museum on this. And suddenly the museum became alive. Because let's be honest, many of these collections were taken and not preserved from communities like mine. They were built through violence and colonization, and it's time to reckon with that, and people are looking for that. And so it's time for these institutions to begin the process of repair and reparation, because these collections also hold the seeds for transformation, especially if we're able to mend the relationships with the people who hold these memories. They are records of ecosystems that once thrived, of languages almost lost, and of relationships to land and water that were once sacred and sustainable. 2, use your platform to speak truth to power. If your institution still accepts funding from fossil fuel companies or arms manufacturers, then it is enabling the systems destroying the planet. I know it's such a difficult conversation around funding, around finances in general, but it is a conversation that we need to be talking about. And as employees, as people of these institutions, you have the right to have your voice be heard around these important matters, because climate action must be consistent or it is complicit. And 3, make your space a launchpad for action and accessible knowledge. Host youth-led workshops, co-curate with frontline communities, and build spaces for climate grief and climate hope. Make your institutions living, breathing parts of the movement. Don't just speak to other experts, but speak with communities, bridge research with people's lived realities, and use your collections to bring together the different sources of knowledge, scientific research, community wisdom, ancestral memory, and activist experience. This will really let your exhibitions and programs uplift the full spectrum of what it means to understand and act in the face of crisis. So many times, young people and civil society and people in general just need a space to come together, to connect, to brainstorm, to talk. And suddenly solutions start popping up, solutions informed and backed by science and research, solutions informed and backed by history. Because at this point, we don't need passive witnesses. We need active, justice-rooted collaborators. We need your archives to protect not just the past, but our future. We need your libraries to elevate the voices so often erased. We need your museums to help us remember, reimagine, and rebuild. So let's activate your collections for climate, for justice, and for life. Thank you.
Big thanks to Mitzi for such an engaging and inspiring lively talk. So Mitzi will be joining us for the Q&A shortly. Please, if you have any insights or questions for our speakers, please share them in the Q&A panel. Thank you. So in the next presentation, we'll have Sarah Sutton, who champions the power of partnerships, showing how cross-sector collaboration can equip museum teams to accelerate climate action, tackle complex challenges, and find joy in shared progress. So let's watch Sarah's presentation.
Hello. Welcome to a story of 3 cross-sector partnerships on behalf of museums and climate action. SDG 17 is Partnerships for the Goals. Partnerships are the foundation of our work at Environment and Culture Partners, and why Partners is in our nonprofit's name. Partnerships make it possible for this team of museum professionals to learn enough and do enough fast enough to accelerate climate action in museums. Partnerships give us the capacity, expertise, and reach to tackle bigger issues than we could possibly do alone. And they bring us the resources and the solidarity to do important work even during the tough times. Being a part of these cross-sector teams is a joy. The shared commitment and the progress makes all the difference. The first example I'll point to is the Frankenthaler Climate Initiative. The funder, the Helen Frankenthaler Foundation, along with a team of renewable energy engineers, plus we museum professionals, collaborate on funding energy efficiency and clean energy projects. In just 5 years, the initiative has funded $17.5 million worth of projects at over 300 visual arts institutions. Each institution is not only farther along in their climate commitments, but they're now measuring and sharing their energy data where before they had little incentive to do so. Another example is the series of decarbonization research projects in our partnership with hundreds of museums and with the engineers at another nonprofit, New Buildings Institute. Together, we've studied and reported on the energy carbon footprint of the museum sector and created energy use profiles for 9 types of cultural institutions, zoos and aquariums, and 7 types of museums. Based on our findings, and with an added partner of a consulting firm, we're now modeling buildings and the impact of adapting temperature and relative humidity conditions to save energy, money, and carbon, while maintaining collections care standards and reducing museums' climate impacts. The 35,000 museums in the U.S. emit 4 million metric tons of CO2 annually, just from energy use. Just think of the savings in money, carbon, and environmental well-being if we were to get to zero. And the only way to get there is to go together. The third partnership is Caretakers of Wonder. I love energy data, but the core of this is museum work, the work that museums do to share our world and its resources with others. The Madison Children's Museum conceived of and led a partnership of the Association of Children's Museums, researchers at the University of Michigan, ECP, and 9 museum partners from all climate regions of the U.S. The museums all learned about and began planning to reduce their carbon impacts, and as a team, they created the Climate Action Playbook, a communications and educational resource on climate change and the environment. The focus is children 8 and under, and the audience is anyone who cares for and about children, parents, teachers, museum educators, caregivers. It's a kit that shows you don't have to talk about scary things or complicated things to address climate change. What's important is how you model and encourage caring about others and the planet. We know that children who spend time in nature with caring adults are much more likely to grow up caring for each other and the planet, and that is a worthy goal. So what about what we're seeing here in the U.S. right now? Among us adults, we can say it is a scary thing. All of it means our work matters more. The last time the U.S. stepped out of the Paris Agreement, a coalition of businesses, cities, states, and investors stepped in, and alongside them, the cultural sector, higher education, and healthcare. It was called We Are Still In. That cross-sector level of collaboration, sophistication, and visibility changed the work that we do. Its momentum accelerated climate action in the U.S. significantly, and that group and we are still going strong in 2025. Government grants have been taken away from many, but they've been returned to some, and private funders are stepping in. And the museums, libraries, and cultural institutions who care about this work are still forging ahead courageously. I see no loss of momentum. No matter what the local mood, the national crisis, or institutional struggles, this work matters. And museums' position as dependable, well-loved community and national resources, that empowers us to reach out to everyone in ways that blend both urgency and agency. We can reach out to children and governors, businesses and presidents, visitors and residents. The joy of this work is in the partnerships that help us achieve our goals. There is joy in the teamwork and in the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for another inspiring, lively talk. So we'll continue the conversation in a while. So in the next one, we'll have Alina Freire-Fierro highlighting the vital role of Herbaria in sustainable development and calling for greater global collaboration to address the stark inequalities in botanical research between the global north and the global south. So let's watch Alina's presentation.
Hello, everyone. I would like to thank Jose, Luis, and colleagues at the International Center for the Study of the Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property for this invitation. Today, I will talk about the importance of botanical collections on sustainable development. This talk is presented with my somewhat global perspective, as I have worked and done research at institutions in the Americas, Asia, Europe, and are members of many national, regional, and global scientific societies. Most of the data here presented are product of research done with undergraduate students at UTC Herbarium, where I am an associate curator. Ecuador, a small country with less than 300,000 square kilometers, holds more than 70 times the number of vascular plant species per square kilometer than other botanically rich countries like Brazil or China. Dried botanical specimens are deposited at herbaria. The specimens consist of the plant and a label. As an example of a botanical collection, we see here the photo of the QPLS herbarium, which, created in 1929, is the second oldest in the country and holds many nomenclatural types. In the world, there are almost 3,600 herbaria, and according to the Index Herbariorum, the highest concentration is in the global north. In a comparison between Ecuador and North America, there is a stark contrast. While Ecuador has more than 18,000 vascular plant species, there are only 850,000 specimens deposited in 19 herbaria. On the other hand, North America, with more than 15,000 native vascular plant species, has more than 80 million specimens deposited in more than 1,000 herbaria. This data and the distribution map clearly show the significant inequalities on the number of herbaria and specimens in the global north versus the global south. The importance of natural history collections in fields related with sustainability is well known by the collections community. Martin Rudolfo and colleagues presented an overview of studies such as biodiversity, conservation, invasions, global change, etc., that have relied on information from herbaria. The analyzed studies had been published in high-impact journals, and very likely they were based on collections deposited in the global north. Collections from the global south are rarely featured in these high-impact journals. However, ongoing digitization of specimens in GBIF and other international databases could make information from the global south more accessible and relevant. Based on specimens deposited at 2 herbaria, we found that almost 50% of the species of Melastomataceae in Ecuador have medicinal uses. This family had not been previously recognized as medicinally important. In this case, this information at hand could provide additional arguments for conservation of endangered species in the family. Since traditional knowledge about plants and plant species per se are disappearing at fast rates, documentation of tangible and intangible knowledge in herbaria needs to be urgently carried out. Efforts in this direction have been made at the UTC Herbarium, where we documented, for example, the useful plants of on an indigenous community in San Ignacio. We rescued the knowledge of medicinal plants in the markets in central Ecuador. Documenting ecological information about native species would also be used for sustainable activities such as ecotourism, as done by another undergraduate student. Prospection of potential species as natural insecticides could contribute towards a sustainable and healthier agriculture. Vouchers obtained in these studies are deposited at UTSIC. Herbaria are also very important for educational purposes. Younger generations need to be exposed to herbarium collections and fieldwork so they could become more active in fighting against the drivers of climate crisis. To summarize, herbaria are pivotal in the documentation of study of botanical and cultural diversity, which could be tangible or intangible. They are also very important in studies related with basic and applied research. Sometimes something we need to remember and see how to change it is, however, that the countries with the highest diversity are the ones with the lowest number of herbaria. Education, exploration, and potential applications and sustainable use of plants and collaborations at all levels are essential to promote research for more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable planet. Many thanks.
Many thanks to Alina for the presentation. And now we move on to the next one by Susan Parker-Leavy, where we'll discover how the Planet Kids Club at the Museum of Islamic Art Library in Doha, Qatar, uses storytelling and museum collections to spark environmental awareness in children, offering a replicable model that bridges heritage, education, and climate action. And again, a reminder, if you have questions for our speakers, please put them into the Q&A panel. Thank you so much, and let's watch the video.
Hello, I'm Susan Parker-Leavy. I'm the head of Museum of Islamic Art Library, and I'm here to talk to you today about connecting our program, Planet Kids Club, to museum collections. So I'm going to first introduce the museum, the library, and the Planet Kids Club. And then I'm also going to link Planet Kids Club to Sustainable Development Goals and the National Vision of Qatar 2030. Then talk about marketing, and then about how you can set up your own Planet Kids Club. So Museum of Islamic Art, this is our beautiful museum located on the Corniche in Doha, Qatar, has an absolutely wonderful collection. If you haven't visited, I absolutely recommend that you come and visit. We have materials in manuscripts, wood, stone, ceramics, spanning 1,400 years and across 3 continents. And within the museum, there's our library, which I'm the head of, in which we have a collection of 37,000 books. We have a rare book room, a children's library, and we have 4 programs which are really important to us, which is our book club, our story time, our Planet Teens, and our Planet Kids Club. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail now about the Planet Kids Club. So it happens every month on the last Tuesday of the month. It's for children ages 5 to 10. And each month we take a specific subject related to the museum. So it could be glass or wood or anything like that. And we link it to a story to showing the children the object in the museum, an activity, and a top tip. So this whole program began back in 2021 during the difficult time of COVID, and you can see the original setup was just the kids online, and it's now grown to a very vibrant program. As I said, I wanted to link Planet Kids Club to basically both international and national goals. So the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, Qatar signed up specifically to number 4, quality education, 5, gender equality, 13, climate action, and 17, partnership and goals. So I'll now talk you through how we've linked our programs to this. So again, I said that's also very important. It's part of Qatar's national vision for 2030. So one of the development goals, quality education. So Planet Kids definitely fits into this because it's really encouraging curiosity in children. It's working with young children, teaching them about the environment, sustainability, and reading. Here's a trip through the gallery looking at some mosque lamps. And then this is climate action, so SDG 13. So showing you how the different themes that we have. So things like the ocean, and we take a story about the ocean, and then we have this small glass fish in the collection, and then we have a top tip like turn off your tap while you're brushing your teeth. So those sorts of things. Kids really enjoy the program so much, and we enjoy running it. Another SDG 17, which is about partnerships. So we did a partnership with VCU, Victoria Commonwealth University, Qatar, and Expo 2023. And we ran a series of workshops at the Expo. So we took the Planet Kids Club outside, and we built these dream homes for kids, for cats, sorry, for street cats, which are an issue here in Qatar. And it was such an amazing program with 75 children attending, and it linked into, again, back to our collection and the architecture within the collection. Again, another partnership was with the National Museum, where we did a quilt making exercise where the children had a chance to recycle their clothing and make a quilt. We also have been partnering with Dr. Jane Goodall. I'm sure everybody knows her and her amazing program, Roots and Shoots. Doing activities for Ramadan, talking about, lighting lanterns, all those sorts of things. This was great fun as well, outside at night. And none of this program would really be possible to attend if it wasn't for our amazing marketing and social media team. So we do a lot of amazing marketing, which really makes a big difference. We have children influencers who talk about the program online. And basically, I just want to encourage people to really try and develop this kind of a program with your collections. It's just like so much fun to run. The kids enjoy it, and it has a strategic vision. It's really working towards, advocacy for sustainability and using heritage institutions in this way. If you do want to set up your own Planet Kids Club, we have a lot of resources available online, which you can see here. And you need a great team, and I have a great team. So anyway, I think that's my time. Thank you very much. And I hope you will set up your own Planet Kids Club. Thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you, Susan. We look forward to hearing more from you about how to set up a Planet Kids Club in the Q&A session. Now we move to the last presentation of the series, where Ginevra Bellini introduced an interdisciplinary initiative aimed at unlocking the environmental potential of natural history collections by overcoming data barriers and empowering a collaborative community to advance biodiversity research, conservation policy, and climate-related solutions. So let's watch Ginevra's presentation, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ginevra Bellini, and I'm the community manager of the WiNoDa Knowledge Lab at the Museum für Naturkunde Berlin. Today, I'd like to present to you the WiNoDa Data Competence Center and its aim to activate natural history collections for a better future. Collections are a vital source of biodiversity-related data. They can span back to the late 1700s and provide information about species location, morphology, and even their DNA. We can then use this data, for example, to reconstruct species occurrences, evolutionary changes on a short timescale, and differences between closely related species. Therefore, collections can contribute to several sustainable development goals. Most of all, those related to biodiversity and habitat conservation on land and at sea. But they also play an educational role and therefore foster the protection of cultural and natural heritage. Finally, through collaboration of different institutions, they also stimulate knowledge sharing and cooperation. However, several barriers prevent the use of collection data, either because it's not easy to access, or because the datasets are in formats that don't allow for information aggregation, or because the researchers lack the right skills for that type of data. And that's where the WiNoDa Knowledge Lab comes into play. We help researchers access collection data and digital infrastructures thanks to collaboration with entities such as the National Infrastructure for Research Data here in Germany, or the European Distributed System of Scientific Collections. We also organize workshops, courses, and webinars for researchers to improve their skills in the field of data management, extraction, and analysis. Finally, we also focus on public engagement so that the results of collection work don't stay confined to the world of academia. Speaking of accessing databases, we recently had a webinar on the Animal Sound Archive at the Museum für Naturkunde Berlin. This is one of the oldest and largest archives of animal sounds, with more than 120,000 files. We invited the scientific head of the archive, Dr. Frommold, to present the history of the archive, how to use the database, and some recent studies based on its data. Bioacoustics is nowadays considered a very important tool for biodiversity conservation, as it can allow for the identification of species that are hard to see due to their behavior or habitat. We promoted the event among museum collection managers, biodiversity researchers, data scientists, and bioacoustic specialists, and it led already to new collaborations for the archive. Recently, cutting-edge technologies have also been applied to collection data. The museum has been involved in the KeepIts project, which used AI to extract taxonomic, geographic, and historical information from collection labels. In fact, each specimen comes with its own handwritten label. The AI pipeline allows for the identification of different elements within labels, such as institution, location, and collector. This information can then be used for further analysis. WiNoDa supported the project by organizing a final event with the AI EcoLab, inviting over 100 experts from museum collections, biodiversity, computational linguistics, and AI, and facilitating a discussion and brainstorming session on further uses of the pipeline. The session was recorded, and all materials will be published openly. In conclusion, our end goal is more than just offering courses to help individual researchers advance their careers. It's about creating a virtual and physical space, building a sustainable community, and bringing together people from different fields, professional roles, and levels of expertise in order to truly activate natural history collections for a better future. And finally, this project wouldn't have been possible without funding from the European Union and the German Federal Ministry of Research, Technology and Space. Thank you very much for the attention.
A big thank you to all our presenters for the thought-provoking contributions.